So for a lot of you guys right now, you're graduating from physical therapy school, or you're maybe in your final year. A big question that comes up is, what do you do next? Well, for most people, it's pretty clear you're just going to go practice. But for some people, you're looking at the option of potentially specializing. Now, whether you should specialize or not is a different conversation, and we can have that later. But I want to talk about my path and why I chose to specialize and the reason that I went the route that I did. Now, for me, I'm a board certified cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapist, and I chose to go through the route of completing a residency. If you're thinking, what does a cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapist do? I don't blame you. I had no idea either, but I gained interest in it and I wanted to explore that some more. Now, I'm from Arizona. That's where I went to school from the most part and grew up. And in Arizona, I believe by the time I went into specialty, there were maybe 3 or 4 cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapists board certified. If I was to just stay in Arizona and practice, I don't think I would have had a very good understanding, at least when I was going through this process. I didn't feel like I would get a good understanding of what a cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapist is. So the option that I had was to go through a residency. With a residency, it's a designated program where you have mentors who are going to be knowledgeable in that field and help guide you and train you to become a specialist. Simple enough. There we go. So that was my main reason. It was to get this guided learning, to understand what it was to be a cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapist. And with a residency, it's a focused learning. Like I mentioned, you're going there to specialize and learn about that practice. So that was exciting for me because I get to get hands-on practice. I have mentors and other people who are going to be guiding me through the process versus me trying to navigate this by myself. You have to understand that residencies are not necessary to become a specialist. And for certain specialties, for example, orthopedic, not that it's easy, but you're going to get those cases, you're going to meet those requirements simply just practicing in an outpatient setting. Now, for special populations such as oncology or pelvic health or cardiovascular and pulmonary in this instance, for those specialties, you're not going to always encounter the caseloads that are necessary to meet the requirements to sit for your specialty exam. So it can be very beneficial to do a residency because it's going to be guaranteed that you're going to get those populations. A residency has already gone through the accreditation process, so for sure they already have the necessary requirements to be able to prepare you to sit for the exam. That saves you the trouble of having to go find those caseloads if you're planning on specializing in these harder to find populations that you won't come across in, your traditional settings. Now with cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapy, they've made some changes, but back then you had to do a research project. Now, if you do not have a research project coming out of your graduate study and physical therapy school, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to do one once you leave, because you are being trained for a clinical role, and most people do end up taking clinical roles. And in your traditional clinical roles, there's not a lot of research that's going on. If you're tied in with a larger institution, sometimes there is that opportunity to be part of a research project, but it's rare that you see those opportunities, so you're not going to be able to meet that requirement. So in the case of the CCS, which is the cardiovascular and pulmonary specialty, you had to have that requirement, and if you went and tried to specialize on your own or meet the requirements to sit for the specialization test, you will have a hard time completing that task. So this was guaranteed because it's part of the residency. I had to do a research project. So in doing all of these, I am almost guaranteed that I will be able to sit for the exam, which is great. And the other reason I chose to do a residency, it gives you access to university level teaching. This is one of my goals and targets, to be not only better clinically, but also to improve my academia experience so I can be able to teach, because that is part of my professional goal, to be able to teach. You get that exposure and opportunity to do university level teaching, which is great. So I was able to get that through the residency. And then also, as I mentioned, research is required to sit for the CCS exam. With the residency, I do get that experience. Not only do I do a project, but there's also training and also education on what it is to conduct research and just to be a little bit more comfortable with the research process. It's nothing to the level of a PhD, obviously, but it's going further than what you would have in your DPT program. The other part, as I mentioned earlier, is that you get access to mentors. It's not something that I had in Arizona with people who were board certified in cardiovascular and pulmonary physical therapy. That was not the case. So in this program, there were three, CCS, board certified specialists there. If you remember, I mentioned there were only like three in Arizona. So just in this one program, there were three. So that was a big draw for me because you have three different individuals who specialize and they have their different take on the specialty, and I can learn from them and really get a better understanding. And not just better understanding, but a little bit broader, because once again, it's three different opinions and professional opinions. So that was really great for me, so I could learn from those individuals. So that was my reason for doing the residency. It was mainly because I got access to board certified clinicians who were going to mentor me. It was a very clear path. Everything is already set in place for me to then progress towards sitting for the specialty exam. It gave me experience for university level teaching and also research experience. So those were my personal priorities that I wanted to develop, and I was not going to get that in just going out and practicing. So residency made sense for me. And who knows, maybe it might make sense for you also.